Today's guests are the first guests from last week. Actually, a couple of weeks ago. We have Maps and Fergs. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Good. How's it going?
Excellent, excellent. Fergs, how about you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thanks.
All right, perfect. So let's just get into it, and let's just start talking about what we saw yesterday. What are your guys' initial thoughts and initial summations from yesterday? How about we start with you, Fergs?
Lots of work still to be done. Like, I don't want to pull it apart and go on a rant straight away because I'm going to Maps have his say and what have you, but frustrating moments of brilliance, but frustrating for the most part. Like, yeah, I don't know if you're going to break it down and look at positions after this, but midfield, I mean, everybody's slating them on the forums, and for good measure, I reckon. They didn't play well at all. We can't go through the season with those guys as our starting three. Obviously, that'll change when Lallana and Coutinho come back, providing Coutinho stays, obviously. But yeah, frustrating and worrying, definitely, as a first thought for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Looking at the midfield three that we had yesterday, it felt like there wasn't a creative spark anywhere in there. And the solution to me became very obvious as soon as we hit upon it, which was to take one of them off. Because as soon as we took off Wijnaldum, brought on Solanke, all of a sudden we brought Firmino back just those extra few yards that he could turn provider to the forward line. Also, we had Salah on the pitch as well for the final half hour or so, I believe. We started to look like a cohesive team again. And we started to look as if we knew what we were trying to achieve, whereas for the first hour or so, it never really struck me as obvious. And it felt like the way we were going, that had 0-0 written all over it. All of a sudden, we went down to that midfield too. For the last half hour, we started to play some really good stuff. So hopefully, actually, what we'll learn, excuse me, from yesterday, is that midfield three should never, ever, ever run out in a Liverpool team ever again. It doesn't work. As I said, they aren't too similar. They don't they don't play off each other in any particularly intelligent or any particularly creative way. As soon as you brought Firmino deeper and added that creative spark a bit more centrally, we started to break Crystal Palace down. We started to create chances and actually started to enjoy watching us play. So yeah, it was frustrating, but hopefully while Coutinho and Lallana are absent, we've hit upon a solution that might work until those players come back, and then we can bed those into the team and play a preferred lineup.
I mean, while I said frustrating, don't get me wrong, there were glimpses yesterday of really good interplay, especially on the left. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, Robbo for his debut was he made a couple of mistakes, losing the ball, but to be honest, if you've got that sort of quality delivery, if you've got somebody in the box that's just going to be the poacher and sit in there, we're going to get goals from that. There's no issues at all there. Defensively, got caught out a couple of times, but said he's young, he's not really up to scratch with the system and the way we play. So getting caught out when we push fullback so high up isn't a huge deal at the moment. Yeah, it's obviously personnel change. We're going to need a defensive midfielder in there to screen the centre-backs if we're going to continue to do that, because the midfielders we've got just aren't capable of it. So, yeah.
At least my initial thoughts on yesterday's match. I think again, wow. But basically my initial thoughts are the most important thing is we got the result. 1-0. Yeah. However we got it because, as Map said, it looked like it was going to be a 0-0 draw. And that was incredibly frustrating if that had been the case. Again, Fergs, you touched on it. There was some really good interplay down the left side. And I think the first thing I want to talk about with Andy Robertson, who had his debut yesterday, and I think he had a very good debut yesterday. Certainly, at least I felt the best player on the pitch in the first half. He had a quality delivery, but really what I was impressed with was how well he the chemistry was between him and the rest of the players. He seemed to be making really good runs into open spaces and really being a genuine attacking threat down the left side. And that's refreshing to see, in addition to the quality ball that he's putting in.
Yeah, he impressed me yesterday in a number of ways. I think the first one actually was the number of brilliant crosses he was putting in. If Matip had met that header properly, it would have been a hell of an assist. Mane as well, possibly.
That wasn't even the best ball.
Maybe the one to Mane, even better.
Yeah, so that was unreal. That to slide it through the gap, he got it in, just dropped it on top of Mane, and he fluffed out. But the ball to Matip was good. The one to Mane was better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what really impressed me, and I agree with you, Ackman, yesterday, his movement off the ball was really brilliant, because there's a moment in the first half where he passes the ball to Milner and he makes an intelligent run. And it's the kind of run where you can tell that he can't receive the ball as part of a 1-2. He has to be the third player in that passage of play to get the ball. And so the ball moves on from Milner to Wijnaldum, and Wijnaldum plays Robertson through. And that's only possible because Robertson makes the run thinking 2 steps ahead. So it's not just movement off the ball, because Moreno's got that. Robertson's actually got movement off the ball. It feels like it's actually targeted at something, and feels like he knows how he wants the game to develop in the next few steps.
There was another instance of that as well. The one where he played Milner through for Milner's shot on goal. They played the little triangle, then Robbo just dropped on the inside, maybe 5 yards, and played the ball through to Milner, who made the run.
Absolutely.
So he's definitely integrating.
Yeah, he basically, for him, yesterday was a good game for him, actually. I thought, to come in. It's at home. It's against a team that's going to probably sit quite deep. So he's going to get that joy. But I think somebody pointed out on the forums that he is going to be tested should he start the next few games, especially when we're going to be playing some big games coming up soon. So this idea where he's going to go gallop up the field and then leave spaces in behind, he's going to be defensively tested. I don't think he was tested too much yesterday.
I think I'd certainly trust him to stand up to the defensive test more than I would trust Moreno at this stage. Because while the challenge from Crystal Palace wasn't particularly high yesterday, Crystal Palace were actually very poor yesterday and didn't attack us particularly well. It felt like Robertson was at least getting the basics right, and that's really important, because I feel like when I watch Moreno play, it always feels to me as if he's about to do something that no one in their right mind would ever do and get us into trouble. Robertson looks very assured, I think. Yeah, okay, he was caught out a couple of times, but I do think that as he begins to find his feet, more of the same of yesterday. We've got a very good defender on our hands, and I think it's the first time in a long time I felt like we've had someone defensively capable on the left-hand side. So hopefully we'll see more of the same. Go on. Just
to touch on him getting caught out of position, when it happened, there's only a couple of times when he was chasing back that he was actually he tried to get them to come and play back on the outside. 2 seconds.
Okay, I think Fergs had something. He muted his mic. But most importantly, I think for Robertson going forward is basically he just continues to do the basics. I think that in itself will keep Moreno out of the team. Although I do see them actually rotating quite a bit this season. I don't anticipate Klopp doing what he did last season and just relegating Moreno to the bench for long stretches of time.
I mean, I personally hope that he does that. You have to credit the fact that Moreno did perform well in pre-season. He looked very good indeed against Bayern Munich. He looked very good as well against Atletico. And, I looked at him and I thought, okay, maybe he's actually become the kind of player that we all hoped we would get in 2014. And I saw him against Watford, and I think he made a very costly mistake. I think he was still putting in rash challenges, still looked every bit a liability. So I hope that we don't rotate, because if Robertson is in the team and he's in the team for an extended period of time, then on yesterday's evidence, it'll be perfectly on merit. Yeah,
I think so as well. He really took his chance yesterday when it came.
Definitely.
And it was impressive, and I'm happy. And I think I mentioned this to Larissa Carius on the forums yesterday, that for the first time it looks like we have these fullback positions sorted, and that's comforting to know, because Trent Alexander-Arnold looks like a very, very good player in all respects now, including that fantastic free kick against Hoffenheim on Wednesday. It was really a thing of beauty. So I think Klopp might be a little bit pleased about this. He may not have got all his transfer dealings done, but I think getting these fullback positions sorted, one obviously through a transfer and one through the academy, but it looks like he's got a pair of two very good fullbacks on his hands right now.
It certainly does. Go on.
Right. So yeah, what I was trying to say was him getting caught out of position. When he was chasing back, he was being in the right position by getting on the inside of the player and trying to force them down the outside rather than allowing them to run through the centre.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of times he couldn't, but he did actually get back using his pace and managed to get a challenge in. So defensively, Moreno's good at chasing back, although he does seem to be a little bit crazy with his slide tackles. Robertson has the pace obviously there to get back, but he was doing the right thing in getting inside them and forcing them out into a less dangerous area. So yeah, I'm not too fussed based upon what I saw yesterday about him pushing up a little bit if he can continue to do the same thing he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you guys look at the center back performance yesterday? I can't really draw too much out of it because, I don't think that there was much of a threat from Crystal Palace at all, even though they actually managed to carve out one very good opportunity in the second half.
That was probably the only moment where I looked at those centre-backs yesterday and thought that they weren't doing their job. I think Loftus-Cheek got the wrong side of Klavan too easily. Matip saw the ball and chased it and left Benteke completely unmarked. And thank God that chance fell to Christian Benteke, because if it had fallen to someone better, then it would have been 1-0. It's just...
To be honest, I think... No, go on.
Okay. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Matip was in the right position there. Maybe a yard or two off. What he tried to do was cut out the front post to not allow the cross to come across for anybody running in the back. Whereas Gomez needed to be a little tighter to Benteke to get the challenge in. So I think Matip's right in what he's done there. I just think he maybe was a yard too close to the line.
Yeah, the idea was fine. The idea was good, but the execution wasn't great. He didn't position himself where he needed to be to stop Benteke getting that ball. And that's a worry. I mean, you've got to have the intelligence and the ability to put your ideas into practice. And that was a disappointment, because up until then, Matip and Klavan together had looked relatively untroubled. And it's been a long time since I've looked at a Liverpool centre-half pairing and not been having heart attacks all afternoon. So I was quite pleased. I'd be perfectly happy for them to play again on Wednesday night together. I think they did a pretty decent job, barring that one moment. And hopefully, I think they'll continue to get their chance.
But that's really one of the concerns, isn't it? Because if you look at Klavan, he's probably going to get quite a few games this season, just based on Klopp rotating because of the number of games that we will have. And that's a problem, isn't it? That he's going to be getting a number of games when he should really be relegated to being the fourth choice.
Certainly is. I mean, you have a £20 million man on the bench who just doesn't seem to be playing with any confidence at all and seems to keep getting us into lots of trouble. Suddenly, Klavan seems the better option, and that in and of itself, you're right, that's a big problem. But if Klavan continues to play a big part for us this season, then it suggests that we won't have done what we need to have done in the transfer market this summer. Fingers crossed we end up landing a target like Van Dijk so that we don't have to think about that. But looking ahead, if we fail to land a defender, I'd certainly consider, despite the fact that it's not ideal, putting Klavan in ahead of Lovren at this stage, because I think he was a lot better yesterday than I expect Lovren would have been.
I think Lovren's thing isn't a confidence issue. I think he's brimming with confidence, but that's his problem, because he's arrogant with it. He believes he's going to win the ball every time he goes for it, and he just doesn't. And then he just doesn't have the mental capacity or the understanding to get back and recover from it. If he refrained from doing the diving in, refrained from playing the way he plays, if he tried to adjust, he'd be a better defender for it. He's got the skills. I mean, he's decent in the air. He's reasonably quick for a centre back. Not the fastest, but he's quick enough. It's just he doesn't read the game overly well, and he just wants to win the ball all the time, which doesn't work, especially with the way we play.
So I disagree with that. I think that you saw him at Southampton. He had what I saw as serious presence. He was such a noticeable defender. He was very vocal. He was always seemingly winning the ball. He wasn't regularly beaten in the air. To be honest, for a while, he was about as good as anyone in the Premier League. And since he's arrived at Liverpool, he seems to have shrunken into himself quite a lot. And going in to try and win those kind of challenges, you're sliding in quite a lot, is evidence to me of a serious lack of composure. Because it takes composure to be able to hold your line and position yourself. Think a couple of steps ahead. Where is he going with the ball? How do I make his route to goal more difficult? So the fact that he's sliding in so often and making rash challenges, to me, is evidence of the fact that he's lacking confidence. He's lacking confidence in his own ability to just hold firm, hold his line, and keep the defence together, which is something he did so well at Southampton, but hasn't really done for us.
I think some of that is a little bit by design too, because I think Foey was mentioning it in one of the threads the other day. He was talking about when he had met with the Brøndby coach, and the Brøndby coach mentioned that one of the arts of defending is to push up really high instead of actually laying off, so that you actually make the initial tackle. So I feel that Lovren is instructed to do what he's doing, and hence he goes in there so aggressively. But you can get it right 9 times out of 10, but that one time when somebody turns you could be left for dead. And I think he had been left for dead once before, maybe a couple of seasons ago against Crystal Palace itself, wasn't it? Was it Bolasie who did that to him? I forget. But he had been completely turned near the halfway line, and we conceded a goal. So this is maybe the way they are instructed to defend, I feel sometimes, considering how much we actually do it, how high we play that line.
There has to be some sort of problem with the way they are being coached to defend, because we just don't defend well. Like, defensive positioning is something we really, really, really lack. Yeah. We just don't seem to have the knowledge to be able to do it properly. So like I said, I mean, they're obviously being told to be aggressive. We have the counter press in front of them. And I said, because we don't have anybody in the gap playing the holding midfielder, giving them a screen and that extra level of protection, it does all boil down to them. So the composure thing that Maps just mentioned, I think it is that. I don't know if I agree with confidence, but composure definitely, because it's pressure. Like, he's being relied upon to be that last line of defence before Miggs. So he wants to do the right things, he just doesn't do them well.
Any quick thoughts on Gomez's performance yesterday? I thought he was asked to do a job, he came in and he did it. I don't see anything beyond that.
He didn't impress me anywhere near as much as Alexander-Arnold did, but that was never really going to happen. There was one really nice run that he made through the midfield, so you could see glimpses of genuine ability on the ball. Fed Firmino through for a decent shot on goal. I must say I didn't really notice him a great deal other than that, though for a defender sometimes that's actually no bad thing. Some of our defenders in recent years have become far too noticeable for all the wrong reasons. So the fact that he sort of passed me by is probably quite a good sign. Shows that he probably did quite a good job.
I think he gave the ball away an awful lot, to be fair. The game passed him by quite a few occasions. He did get caught out, but again, like I said, by design, the way we play, he did have that good run, and that was a glimpse of like how he played when he came into the team under Rodgers at left back. Like, he was marauding, probably be the right word to use. But yeah, it wasn't overly spectacular. I don't think he was bad. He was trying too hard, if anything. So I'd definitely say he was trying too hard to impress when he could have just played his game.
He seemed to be, at least from my perspective, came in, needs to do a job. I agree with you. He gave the ball away quite a lot, at least for my liking. And I think we saw a lot less of that when he came in at left back. I remember the main praise that we were giving him for when he came in under Rodgers was his composure. And it seems to be he's trying to gain that back at this point because he's been out for so long. So definitely, again, I don't think right back or fullback is going to be his position long term. And I don't know what his future is long term, but he got a competitive game in, and that's a good thing for him personally. So at least those are my thoughts on Gomez. Let's talk about that dire midfield. There's a lot to unpack in there because there's a lot of trash in it right now. So I didn't think anyone particularly stood out yesterday at all. I thought Henderson got a little bit better in the second half. Milner had some good patches of play, but again, Milner also gave away a lot of very cheap free kicks as well in dangerous positions just by virtue of being reckless. And Wijnaldum, well, my feelings on Wijnaldum are pretty well known. I just don't see the point of it. He did play. Yeah, he did play. Yeah, I'm sure he played. I keep my eye out for him. But again, my feelings on him are pretty well known. I just don't see him as a central midfield player. I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't see him as a central midfield player. That's about it.
He certainly doesn't have the range to be a central midfielder. And the problem for Wijnaldum is that the position he's best in, which seems to me to be central attacking midfield, is, number one, a position that we've been playing without for quite some time. And second of all, a position in which we're absolutely sorted anyway, because Firmino and Coutinho would surely play ahead of him there. So looking at him, I can't really see what he's doing in the team. And now that he's sort of been shoehorned into central midfield, games seem to pass him by completely anonymously. And I must say, he's another one who seems to shrink under pressure. You saw that chance in front of the Kop yesterday. If he'd had any composure, any belief in his ability to strike the ball halfway decently with his left foot, we could have scored there. That moment where he tried to shift it onto his right, didn't really manage it, the chance disappeared, was emblematic, in my opinion, of the way he plays. He plays so as not to be noticed. He plays in a way that he just wants to avoid trying to make mistakes. And you can't afford a passenger like that in your midfield. The solution to me, as I said before, became really obvious as soon as he went off. Because as soon as we went off, we started to play football because we had Firmino doing a little bit higher up the pitch, what Wijnaldum couldn't quite do, a little bit deeper. And all of a sudden, the play started to connect properly. Looking ahead, I hope that we've learned from the experience of the first two matches, because Wijnaldum's been extremely poor, I have to say. And Firmino, when he's been playing it more as a number 10, has been outstanding, actually, for the last couple of months now. Hopefully, while Coutinho and Lallana are out, hopefully that's what we'll turn to.
I said some argue that that's his best position, Firmino's, as the 10. But no, Wijnaldum and the midfield in general yesterday, I believe, were poor. Very poor. It's like, I mean, I want to say we're a top club, but I don't believe we are a top club anymore. We're an almost there. And a club of our aspirations, at least, shouldn't be having a midfield on the pitch like that together at the same time. It's just, all three players are very, very similar in that they don't really specialise in anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, yeah, it just doesn't work. Like, you could argue it's the same as the Lampard-Gerrard England midfield. Like, you can't play them together because they're too similar.
The problem with Lampard and Gerrard was that they were two great players who were too similar. The problem we have in our midfield is we have a series of quite average players who are far too similar.
They're quite similar, yeah. So, I mean, there were a lot of people yesterday in the, and even today in the post-match threads, etc., on the forums, saying that maybe Chan should have been in there, or even Grujic. That would give a different, obviously, dynamic to the midfield there. But Palace are a bogey team. They always seem to get a result against us. Is it something you want to risk, not having your more experienced players in there against a team like that? So I can see why Klopp's done it. It didn't really work all that well although I suppose you could say it did because we won, but like at least as a fan watching, that it was poor. Really wasn't sort of. Yeah, it didn't appeal at all, really.
Well,
I think we won in.
Go ahead, Maps.
I think we won in spite of the rotation and not because of it. So yeah, it's great we won. I mean, I'll always be pleased with Liverpool victory, but I don't think that the rotational policy is something that we ought to stick with, especially when we've got players like Coutinho and Lallana unavailable at the moment. I think, yeah, okay, you're looking ahead to Hoffenheim and thinking, yeah, it's a huge game. We need to be in the Champions League, but we also need to focus on the here and now. And the rotation, taking players like Salah out of the team, you could see the effect of that on our play. And actually, by the same token, you could see how much better we were when they came on. So I think it was a risk. I don't think it was a risk that particularly paid off until we started to undo that and actually put the players on the pitch who, in my opinion, should have been on there in the very first place.
Salah, I'd probably agree with not resting him, although I don't think he did all that great against Hoffenheim anyway.
True.
So resting him, I mean, he's one of our better players at the moment based upon pre-season, and if that's what you're going to take as form, he's one of the better performers at the moment. But yeah, it's nice to have an option like that off the bench. Like, we haven't had that kind of tricky, pacey, direct approach sitting on the bench to bring on in recent years. And you think impact subs, it's the kind of person you'd want to bring on. I agree, we should definitely have him on the field to start with. We shouldn't need to have him sat there. But yeah, it's nice to have that option.
Problem is that the squad at the moment is so thin that to bench a player like Salah, a real star like Mohamed Salah, is so detrimental to our football because we don't have anyone else that can come in and do the same job. We have two out-and-out wide players. We need both of them on the field as often as possible. If we had a third, if we'd managed to sign, for example, Oxlade-Chamberlain, who's a player I actually quite like, I'd have been perfectly okay with benching Salah. It's just that the squad's so thin that you take Salah off and then you force Firmino out wide, the football dissolves.
My view is in agreement with what Maps had said earlier, with that you need to change the formation. I've been a big proponent of the 4-2-3-1, and there's only one reason why I support that, because you have to ask yourself, who's in your best four attacking players? Is it, at least that we have fit and available right now, it's Sturridge, Mane, Firmino, and Salah. And how do you get them all on the pitch together in a good way? And the 4-2-3-1 does that. Is that worth sacrificing Gini Wijnaldum? Yes, I believe that is absolutely worth it. If you can put out your best 11, you should put out your best 11. I don't believe in necessarily saving for the bench, even though you want to make your bench look better. But I think the first thing is you want to make your starting 11 look better.
If you played the 4-2-3-1 though, do you think Firmino playing as that behind the striker guy is disciplined enough to drop into and make it a three-man midfield?
I think so. He does that. We've seen with Firmino.
No, I understand that. I'm just thinking over the course of a whole game with that added responsibility, you're then giving whoever you're playing as your two. So yesterday, for example, would have been Milner and Henderson as a deeper pair. They somebody else in there, which is what Gini's giving them.
Personally, I would have played if it were a midfield two. I would have gone with Chan over Milner, but at least Henderson and Chan together in that midfield. Again, solid but not spectacular. But I believe in Firmino in that number 10 role. I really do. He's just really good at linking play. Without Coutinho in the team, you need someone who can link midfield and attack. And he can do that. In fact, that's what he's really good at. What he's really good at is being the linchpin for everything right now. He may not get 20 goals a season, but usually what we praise in his forward play is how he creates as well for others. So I see him more as a number 10. I think that's where he should be played going forward, especially when we're without Coutinho and when we are without Lallana, and that three-man midfield really becomes a burden for the team.
And then, taking that, would you then sort of hinge your bets on Sturridge being the starting striker? Like yesterday, I could have thrown something at him. Had I been at the match, he would have got some stick. Like, there was 2 instances at least that I can remember off the top of my head where he just doesn't want to chase. He makes no effort whatsoever. He backed out of a 50-50 chase for the ball. And, I mean, it's not as if he was ever slow. He was quite quick. He backed out of that. And then another one where he tried to knock the ball around somebody when he was on the right touchline and just give up. He just kind of knocked it, realised he wasn't going to get there and didn't even bother. Like, he's such a supremely talented footballer, but he's just mentally broken, as well as obviously having physical issues. He's fitness and he's always injured, but mentally he just doesn't have the desire or the motivation to be what we need going forwards, in my opinion at least.
I'll be willing to put up with him pulling out of a 50-50 and sometimes not chasing the ball. He just gives us so much quality up front. Again, the next best option is Dominic Solanke. And I like Solanke. I think he's done really well so far. But he is still pretty young. And maybe him starting a game at this point is a little too soon. Or maybe starting some games for him right now is probably okay as well. But I'm totally fine with Sturridge up front. I just think that he provides us with a lot of quality, especially in his movement. And he's underrated on the ball as well. So if you can put him in a 4-man attacking unit with Firmino, Salah, and Mane, I think that's just going to improve us going forward. I don't see that as being a detriment. So again, at least this is my opinion, as opposed to, you know, maybe taking out Wijnaldum and putting Grujic in, because Grujic, if he were the real deal at this point, I think he'd probably get a look in. There's no way that he shouldn't get a look in. Was he even on the bench yesterday?
He was, yeah.
I can't remember.
Was he?
Grujic, yeah. I'm pretty sure Grujic was on the bench. I might be wrong, but I think I saw him on the bench.
Okay. So at least he was on the bench, which is one positive thing for him, I guess.
I mean, the Sturridge thing, I mean, it wasn't 50-50 challenges he was backing out of, though he does do that as well. It's just, he just didn't have any motivation to go that extra bit. Like, no desire for the ball, no hunger. It's like, he's great when he has the ball at his feet, but he's like the typical schoolyard footballer, like that wants the ball to his feet, thinks he's amazing. And yeah, it's great he's got that confidence and he is pretty damn skillful and uses the ball well. But you just want somebody that's going to make the effort. Like, there's times where I'm watching him run after the ball and he's just so lazy. So I'm just thinking, you're not slow. Run for it. Make an attempt. You never know. You could get there ahead of the defender. You could get a nick on it and you know what I mean? Just do anything but pull up and be too scared to chase the ball in case you fall over and break yourself. It's a pet peeve of mine. Coutinho does the same thing, like challenging for headers. I know he's not the biggest guy in the world. He doesn't have any weight behind him. But if you watch him when he goes to challenge for a header, he'll go and then stop a yard shot of the guy, turn his back, and then do this little half-assed little tiptoe to make it look like he's made an attempt to header it.
Well, again, I think I don't think you're wrong. I totally see your point regarding Sturridge, but I'll be willing to put up with it, especially now at this juncture of the season with the squad that we have available. So those are usually, because what we saw yesterday with Solanke is Solanke performed really well in that. And in fact, he was involved with the goal. It was a little bit lucky, the deflection that came back from the Crystal Palace defender, but he was involved in the goal, and that was a positive. And I think Sturridge should be given the same kind of system to play within.
I think a more relevant question, given Sturridge's injury record, than do we prefer Solanke or Sturridge, is do we prefer Solanke or Firmino up front? Because we all know it, Sturridge is going to spend long periods of this season on the treatment table. Now, that leaves us with a decision to make as to whether to put someone like Origi up front, which I hope we don't do, or Firmino up front or Solanke up front. And I think it will be a battle between those two, or a decision between those two. And I hope that we put Solanke up front. I think it brings the best out of Firmino to have him drop deeper. And I did like watching Solanke yesterday. Much as he isn't as talented as Sturridge at the moment in any case, the industry that he provided yesterday arguably won us the game. To make that challenge, to just get that little bit of luck, gamble, take on the defender, see if you can win the ball off him, that was what fed Mane for the winner. If that's the kind of industry that characterises his overall game, I'd be perfectly happy to see Dominic Solanke be our main striker for the rest of the season, especially when Sturridge is out. When Sturridge is in, yeah, I'd probably also be willing to put up with the fact that he's not the most industrious. But I get the feeling that it's not going to be that big a question for us this season, because surely at some stage Sturridge is going to fall to an injury again. Then
I think it'll be soon.
Solanke might come into the team by default. I think it'll be soon as well.
Yeah, I think it'll be soon. Sturridge is not capable of playing too many games, especially in a row. So whether it's by just rotation, but he won't be playing too many games. So I'm looking forward to seeing Solanke. I really think he should be getting a start. I don't know if he should be getting a start at Hoffenheim, but he really should be getting a start at some of these Crystal Palace type home games where we don't have to play 3-man midfields. So those are really my thoughts on that. Again, Mane yesterday, I thought first half he was a little bit less involved than normal, especially the early part of the first half. But obviously that tenacity that he shows basically now, he's proving to be our most important player, if not our best player right now. And if he goes down, boy, I'm really nervous if he goes down at this point.
And that's really why we needed more reinforcements this summer. We brought in Salah, and I was really pleased by that. But I was always stating the case over the summer for another wide player, particularly someone like Oxlade-Chamberlain. People asked what was the need for a player like that. I said, well, we're one Mane injury away. We're one twinged hamstring away from actually not looking any good in attack at all. I think it's an urgent priority we get some kind of support for Mane and Salah.
Well, isn't Oxlade going to Chelsea? At least, isn't that what the rumors are?
I haven't heard those rumours. I'll certainly look into them. There was a lot of talk in the Times that Oxlade-Chamberlain really favoured a move to Anfield. And I think one of the writers whose name escapes me at the moment actually said on another podcast, if you're a betting man, maybe you should shove a fiver on Oxlade-Chamberlain joining Liverpool this summer. Obviously, that hasn't materialised, but he's just an example. We really urgently
spend the money
to bring in someone who can do a similar job, who can attack at pace down the wings.
Would you want to spend the money or give Ryan Kent a chance?
I'd rather spend it. I think Ryan Kent looked good in pre-season, but I think there's a big difference between looking good in pre-season and really being able to perform. I'd rather we were able to bring in someone who could perform more reliably. And hey, if we can't sign a midfielder, then I'd be perfectly happy to sign a winger instead.
Well, it's not about, there is Ryan Kent, but I think the bigger question and the more important question is, would you be willing to give Markovic a chance?
Yeah, well, I'd totally forgotten about him, to be honest. But, I mean, I see his best position as the number 10 rather than the winger. I mean, his brain is there. You see, he's playing the right kind of balls. I mean, people will say, oh, he's really quick, he can't run with the ball. But I just don't think that's him. After watching him, the way he links up with players, especially when he first came to us, at least anyway, I see his best position as a 10.
I agree with you. Even though I was being facetious about Markovic, I do agree with you. I really like his football brain. Again, he just seems to make, especially his passing game, I just really, really think his passing game is underrated. And again, a lot of people talk about his dribbling and how he dribbles in a straight line or his pace. He seems to be pretty quick. But for me, it's all about his passing game. But I don't think he's going to get a chance here. I think his career, at least over here, is completely done. As far as Kent goes, I'm intrigued by him. I've always been intrigued by him. I'll be perfectly honest. He seems to be a player that you do envision, at least in this type of team, as being one of those young players who has potential and who can be sort of a spark off the bench. At least that's how I see him.
Well, I mean, there's Wilson as well, although he's injured.
Yeah, Harry Wilson as well. But I Oxlade-Chamberlain is one of those players who Maps had mentioned. I like Oxlade-Chamberlain, but what do you think about the rumors that are coming up about Draxler being available? Would you prefer Draxler, or would you prefer Oxlade-Chamberlain?
I'd take Draxler. There's no question about that.
Yeah, me too. I would really like Julian Draxler to be in this team. Again, I don't think it actually does anything in terms of addressing a need at this point, except for the fact that it doesn't really address that midfield. It doesn't address the center back position, but it gives us another real quality player in the team. And we're not in the position to decline quality players. Let's put it that way.
No, we need the quality and depth. We don't have any, as you can see from our bench that we had to play at the field yesterday. We don't have the players. It was always said that if we could field an 11, our first 11 could challenge anybody when they're all fit and available. Now, it's okay. It's all good and well saying that, but we don't have the bench to back it up, because inevitably, whether it's training that is too much for them or just rough and tough season, the way the Premier League is, we're going to drop people to injuries. So we need that quality and depth. We need to have people, say like Draxler or Ox, on the bench to give us that option. Like I said yesterday, we could bring Salah on, and that's great. Arguably, he should have started the game, but we need to have people like that on the bench as instead of the youngsters to be able to bring on. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's nice to see the youngsters on there to get given a chance, and they're going to need games. So if we do bring in people, then they're not going to get as much experience. They could end up stagnating, and we'll have to move them on and never know if we had a star on our hands because they're not getting given the chance.
So what are your thoughts on Julian? Would you rather him come in as opposed to Oxlade-Chamberlain?
Probably, yeah. If he's an option, certainly more creative than Oxlade-Chamberlain. Poses a much greater goal threat. He's a more complete player overall. If we could land a target like that, I think we'd be doing extremely well.
You want to give the youngsters a chance. Like, I've kind of felt in a few games, why not give Grujic a chance? Again, he plays for these small portions of a game, and he looks fairly competent. So why not give him the chance? Especially when Wijnaldum is not looking as good as he maybe should be looking. And, we had the rumors the other day of us being in for Seri, the player from Nice in Ligue 1 over there. I like him. I think he's a suitable alternative to Naby Keita, although I don't think he's as defensively strong as Keita is. But certainly in terms of going forwards, I really like him as a midfield player. I think he's he really is one of those players who can control the game, push the tempo, and I really enjoy that. But when I look at Wijnaldum, what I'm thinking is that's what he should be. When I watch Seri's game, I think this is what Wijnaldum should be doing. He should be picking up the ball and driving into midfield at times. And the fact that he does these 2-yard, 4-yard layoffs to the fullback and keeps it simple and then sort of ghosts through the midfield, it's a little bit frustrating, and it makes you wonder why we spent 25 or something odd million on him.
I think that's a problem with our whole midfield in general, bar Coutinho, maybe Lallana, although I think he tries to overdo it, in that they all just seem to want to pass the buck to each other. They don't want to have the responsibility and take it on their shoulders to make the driving run. Even if it's just 5 or 10 yards, like when they get the ball, the first thing they're doing is looking to lay it off. Now, I lost count yesterday of the amount of times where either Henderson or Milner could have just pushed up just 10 yards with the ball into the space. Maybe, it's going to condense things a little bit. But that's not necessarily a bad thing when we do have players capable of playing intricate little passing movements, as you could have seen earlier on with Robbo and Milner and Gini and stuff on the left-hand side. But, yeah, it's frustrating to watch. It's just, here, you have the ball. Like, see, you see if you could do something with it. No, I don't want to. Never mind, you have it back. And, yeah, they just don't have the balls to do it. So getting in somebody like Siri or Keita or... I mean, it's great for us. I don't think we should be looking to do that.
Do you like him? Do you think that he's a worthwhile target alternative to Naby Keita?
I have to be honest, I haven't really seen much of him play. He seems to divide opinion, though. I don't regularly watch Nice, so I can't really claim to have a particularly well-developed opinion on him. A lot of people have compared him to Naby Keita. I think Larissa Karius on the forum's done that. From the very little that I've seen of him, I would say that it's not necessarily the best comparison. I don't think Seri, from what I sort of glean, is the kind of player who likes to get forward a lot. From what people have told me, he's quite a controlling influence on the midfield. Rather than a kind of box-to-box, he's more of a quite calm influence who keeps the midfield ticking over. That's the general impression I get. And hey, if that's the kind of player that we'd be getting in him, then I think that could be great for us. Someone to add a little bit of character to the midfield would be perfectly welcome by me.
I'm hoping that he is a target, and consequently, he's also a target for Barcelona, weirdly enough.
Yeah, I don't like to use this as an argument, but that's actually sort of filled me with some hope. The idea that Barcelona might be interested in him suggests he might have something about him, and that's not an argument that I usually like, but it has turned my head and made me think, oh, I wonder what they've seen in this guy. If he really can control the midfield the way people have said, then immediately that's one hell of an improvement over what we've got, because as I was saying earlier on, we have, barring Coutinho, who's only really just discovered that position, a set of players who in the midfield are relatively anonymous. You know, often they're quite tidy, and they can get the basics right, but there's no real identity there. You have a player that can immediately come in and add a certain character to the midfield, and I think that would be worth every penny. It doesn't have to be Keita, it could be someone like Seri, and to be honest, at this rate, I'd probably be happy with that.
Like, don't get me wrong, we need midfield improvements, but I'd rather take a traditional defensive midfielder, a holding player that specialises in that, to then allow us to use that as a base to go from, not have to rely on Henderson, who doesn't really play that role, or Chan, who, again, that's not his best role. Then we have better competition for the couple of further ahead spots in the midfield. Yeah, I mean, obviously Coutinho and Lallana are injured at the moment, but it just gives them a platform to work from and not have to becoming too deep to try and make the stuff happen, which is what's happening right now.
Yeah, you're right about that, because we do have a problem with people moving into midfield when they have space ahead of them. Chan does that. It's not like he doesn't, but at times he's very aimless when he does do that. He sort of does that with no purpose in mind. At least that's what I feel.
Kind of lazily drifts a little bit. He's looking around for something to happen, but his brain's not quick enough.
Yeah, there's either no movement ahead of him, or he's started to go somewhere and he has no real clue as to what to do next. So that can be an issue. And regarding that deeper midfield position, there's another player that seems to be on the market, especially ironically at PSG as well, is Krychowiak, or Krychow, whatever his pronunciation.
How do you say it?
Yeah, I think that's how you say it. Like Krychowiak, or but he's a player that I really liked at Sevilla, but he's really been trash at PSG. I think there's no other way to say it. Yeah, for some reason he's just never agreed to the way they've. Yeah, somehow he's just never, his style has never agreed with what PSG want to do. So, but I still like him as a player, and I think he'd be a very, very decent fit in that number 6 position, even though he's not much of a footballer. He's not great on the ball in it by any stretch of the imagination.
But that's what our other midfielders are there for. You have the luxury, like if you're playing a 3-man midfield, in my eyes at least, you need to have one that's going to specialise in sitting and breaking things up and then giving the ball off simply. You need one that's going to be box to box to provide defensive support and getting a body on the edge of the box. rather than a run into the box. And then your sort of playmaker kind of guy, which is going to link everything up together, look for the runs ahead, and be the guy that's going to be in the box as well when it's out wide. So we don't have that right now. We have sort of three of the middle type who just want to run around. We don't have anybody holding. And obviously with Coutinho and Lana out, we don't have the playmaker either. So, yeah, I'd definitely focus on bringing in the defensive type.
I think he'd be a good acquisition. If people are worried about possibly a lack of technical ability on his part, I would say that if you're looking for a number 6, a more defensively minded midfielder, the actual technical side of things isn't the main priority. Because what you really want in a defensive midfielder, and N'Golo Kante sums this up very well, despite the fact that he actually does have excellent technique, you want someone with the mental fortitude to be able to make interceptions, to be able to get between players and the ball, and to be able to get himself in the right position at the right time. That's the kind of thing that I think Cracovia could do extremely well, and probably an awful lot better than someone like Emre Can, who when he arrived, I quite favoured him as the solution for a defensive midfield. But I think what Emre Can lacks is the mentality. I think he's quite decent on the ball. There's nothing particularly wrong with his ability as a footballer on the more technical, more physical aspect of it. But I think mentally, things don't really feel like they're always firing on full cylinders with Emre Can. So I'd be quite keen to see someone like Cracovia come in. I think that could be an immediate improvement on what we have. And if he's a player that's available, he could make us better straight away. Now, the thing is, it's so obvious looking at that midfield that we need more than one player.
Yeah,
you could bring in someone like Naby Keita. You could bring in Seri, who, as I said, I don't know a huge amount about. But for argument's sake, you could bring in Seri. You could put him in the midfield next to Coutinho. And then there's still question marks over Henderson, who I quite like but don't love. Emre Can, who I think is decent but not great. And then a bunch of other midfielders whose days at Liverpool, I think, in an ideal world, ought to be numbered. You need to start looking at how we can build an entire midfield. If Krikoviak's available for a good fee next to another midfielder that we could get, I don't see why we shouldn't be interested.
Yeah, I can see that too. I'd be open to any real signing right now, to be honest with you.
Anybody.
Anybody. If it's who is it? Even if it's someone like I don't know, maybe Everton wanted to sell Rooney to us, I'd bring Rooney in as well.
Oh no, I don't think I'd do that. I saw somebody mention Steven Nzonzi in the forums.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
He's
another alternative.
Don't get me wrong. We're probably going to get slated for this. I'd take him.
I'd take him too.
It's somebody that's strong, capable of breaking up the play, and isn't going to shy away. We just have too many people who just want to hide, and it's frustrating as hell to watch as a fan.
Yeah, I'd take him too. He's put in a transfer request, from what I know, so he's probably available. So I would definitely take him as well, and because I think we need reinforcements, just to make up more numbers in the team, just in general. And
we have a small squad.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the upcoming game, Hoffenheim?
I'm apprehensive, to be honest, because we got cut open so easy in the first game. A couple of times early on, and it was just scary to watch. I mean, we did settle a little bit after that, but if they come and get a really good start, because I mean, traditionally Anfield has been where we have good starts, and we overload so many teams early on. But there's the rare occasion where we just don't seem to come out of the changing rooms, and teams swamp us early on. And if that happens, the fans are going to get on the back, and they're going to be struggling, obviously to deal with Hoffenheim, but the fans as well. I don't think that's what we need right now. The players' egos are pretty fragile because everything's up in the air. I don't know. I mean, obviously, my heart says, yeah, we're gonna stomp it, but my head's telling me, we should be worried.
I'm very pleased with what we managed to do, at least results-wise, going away from home in the first leg, because I think we were fortunate actually to come out of there with the win, because they missed a penalty early on, and the game could have been very different after that.
Oh, yes.
So I think we were a little bit fortunate to come out with the. I mean, yes, we were fortunate, but I think we deserved it after that point. I think we had the better part of the attacking exchanges as well. I was a little bit disappointed with the goal that we conceded. It was a good goal. It was a really good strike, but I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't keep the clean sheet. And I think going home, we should be fine. I'm quite confident in what we need to do, although I don't think it'll help if Hoffenheim get the first goal in this game. I really don't think it'll help. And you kind of want to get the first goal. You kind of want to put the tie to bed, and you just want to go from there. I think that's probably the best way forwards for us. But
if we get the first goal, though, and they do manage to get an equaliser, the momentum's with them, because they obviously they get another goal and talking extra time. But
I'm expecting it to be tougher than people realise. I think they rather impressed me actually in the away leg. They had more of the ball. They did cause us problems. The fact that they scored from a momentary lapse showed that they can pose a danger to us. And especially if what really worries me actually is that looking at the team selection that we had out this weekend against Crystal Palace, I really hope that what we haven't done is rest players like Lovren and Moreno for the benefit of playing them at Anfield against Hoffenheim. Because I got the impression watching us in Hoffenheim last week that those were the players that made Hoffenheim think that they had a chance against us. I hope that what we do is we look at what happened last week where we had those lapses. They certainly seemed to favour the right-hand side of attack, let's put it that way. I hope that we shore things up. Keep Robertson in the team. He did really well against Palace. If he plays against Hoffenheim, he'll deserve it. And to be honest, play Klavan as well. I think we'll be giving ourselves the best possible chance of actually getting a result by keeping the more or less the defence we had, plus Alexander-Arnold as well. I think looking at it last week, seeing Moreno on the team sheet, for example, probably made them think, we've got a shot here.
It's just we don't do well. We score, and then we tend to sit back instead of pushing on. I've seen this, and somebody else posted on the forums as well, and it's annoying to watch the last 10, 15 minutes of a game where Klopp keeps going on about game management, and we don't manage games well because we score a goal, and then we just sit back and invite them on to come and do what they can and think we're arrogant, saying, okay, we can do what we're going to do, and you're not going to be able to break us down. But we're not strong enough defensively to do that.
Yeah, we're not.
We shouldn't.
Yeah, we're definitely not strong enough to basically invite teams and invite pressure. Again, I don't think that should be our strategy at all. I think our strategy should be to basically put the tie to bed in the first half. I assume that we'll be playing a very similar midfield to a very similar lineup to what we did yesterday. I think with one noticeable difference. I think Sturridge will go out and Firmino will play up top with Mane and Salah wide, and we'll probably have Chan come in for Wijnaldum. At least that's what I'm assuming.
I'd like that to happen. I don't know if he will do it. I'd like that to happen, though.
I think he was rested. I think for that particular reason. I think that's the only reason Chan was rested yesterday, was for the Hoffenheim game upcoming in midweek. So I assume that's going to be the case. I also think Alexander-Arnold will be back at the fullback position. I think Lovren will be back for Klavan, and I think Robertson will keep his place.
Unfortunately, I think the fact that Wijnaldum played again this weekend, despite the fact that he was utterly dreadful away to Watford, doesn't fill me with a great deal of confidence that he's going to lose his place. That became really obvious to me, as I was saying earlier on, that when he came off and Firmino was able to play in the central attacking midfield role, our football began to make sense again, and we started to actually look like a cohesive unit. I want to feel like we'll learn from this weekend and go into it being adventurous, trying something different, and not just sticking to our guns and hoping that Wijnaldum will come good. So what I want to see is not Firmino up top, because he really came to life and he was feeding a striker. So if it means Sturridge or Solanke starting, so be it. But I would so much rather see a two-man midfield of whatever description, hopefully minus Wijnaldum, on Wednesday night, because that front four can be absolutely lethal, and I think it would be at its most lethal. And make no mistake, I really do think we need to score. I think we'll be given our chances of scoring, we'll be giving ourselves the best possible chance of scoring if we mix up that midfield and we change the system slightly. So hopefully we don't see Wijnaldum. I'd be okay with seeing Henderson and Can together if it meant Firmino, Salah, Mane and a striker. I think that's a system that could really work for us, and that's probably the one I plumb for on Wednesday night.
So I'm hoping that we can put this to bed really in the first half, and then just sort of coast it out from there, and not really have too many.
Trying to coast things out, because I mean we don't have concentration at the best of times. Like we could be a couple of goals ahead, and we just switch off.
Yeah.
Or even when we're chasing games, we do switch off because we want it so much. We're just mentally weak. Like I don't understand how we've managed to stay as we'll call ourselves a top 6 challenger, because we're not a top 4 challenger anymore, but to stay at the top end of the league with players that are so mentally weak.
And what really worries me is that confidence players such as Lovren, who I do rate as a footballer, but I think his composure, as I said before, his composure, his confidence severely let him down. He's the kind of player who I can see the occasion getting to on Wednesday. And he's not the only one, but he's just an example of a team that I think mentally doesn't believe in itself. And I think the weight of expectation on their shoulders to get Liverpool back into the Champions League for the first time in 3 years, for only the second time in about a decade, that's something that really could prey on their minds. I hope that they keep their composure, realise the position that we've put ourselves in now, and see it through.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that Arsenal result away from home last season, where I think we were up 3-1, weren't we? Or 4-1. I think we were up 4-1, and we let them back into the game to make it 4-3 when we really had the game done and dusted. So again, that is an issue for us. Coasting things out, seeing things out, being able to just play good possession football. But that's really what happens when you don't have somebody controlling the tempo of your midfield, and then basically just kind of directing everybody and telling them how to react to each situation. And we're lacking that, sorely lacking that, in fact. But I'm still pretty hopeful for the Hoffenheim game, and I think we should be back in the Champions League proper very soon, at least hopefully after Wednesday.
I'd like us to be. I mean, I think, to be honest, a lot of our defensive frailty is down to Klopp's insistence on pushing the fullbacks so high. Like, with players like Mane and Salah, we don't need them to be so high, because we need to allow them a little bit of space to work in. Like, if we have Mane and Salah, they are both capable of beating a man and getting the ball into the box, whether that be cutting inside or going outside. So all we're doing by pushing the fullbacks up so high is condensing that, and then obviously risking getting caught with them out of position. So I think if we could just stop pushing them up a little bit, have somebody to sit in front of the back four as a designated role and to not really move, because a lot gets said about our interchange and the way people drift around and cover for each other. That's great to have, but at the same time, like, if we're having Genie as the last man because Hendo's made a lung-busting run, and we shouldn't ever be in that position, ever. It's just wrong.
I think his style of play has been pretty similar at Dortmund as well, where he really wanted his fullback to get very high up the pitch. Schmelzer used to get really very high up the pitch, but at that time he used to have Bender basically, as the last man back. So again, I think if the personnel changes, I think you'll see some improvement.
Often I think the aggression comes down to a lack of composure that I was talking about before. The more adventurous defensive style, I think, is often born of a need to impose yourself on a game, where actually what you need to do instead is hold off just a little bit. Lovren, I think, is very often guilty of that. I see Moreno also is guilty of that. They're not the only ones, I must say. I'd like to see us play an attacking style. I think to score a goal would settle the nerves. I think we should hit them hard from the off, do our best to get at them, stop them from playing, put the ball in the net and begin to play the game on our terms. But in order to do that, we need the defence to maintain its composure.
But I was discussing this with Fios, that it's not just a personnel change that will completely make us defensively solid. It's also, so again, like adding Van Dijk would be fantastic, but it's not going to cure everything that ails us, like the set pieces, things like that. These things are structural things that have to be changed as to how you do this and how you defend it. You have to change the entire thing if it's not working. If zonal marking isn't working for you and you're constantly losing your man, and they're getting free headers, you have to change it. It's somehow, some way, you have to completely change the system. It's not about a retweak here or a retweak there.
See, zonal marking for me, like in theory, should be the default system, but in reality, all you're doing is by giving each person a zone, is allowing a little bit of overlap, and then the players are not sure. Like, that's going behind me. I'll let the guy behind me get it. Whereas the attacking team, if we're defending them, have free run to be able to get a better jump, better position, and there's no communication problems there. They're challenging for the ball. They're not worrying about what area they're supposed to be covering. Exactly.
Yeah, they're not worrying where to be. They're saying our job is simple: just attack the ball.
So on paper, like the system we use is great, but in reality, not. Like zonal marking should be like impossible to break down if you have the right personnel. Like everybody has the zone, everybody knows what they're doing. If this happens, you deal with it. If that happens, you deal with it. It should work, but we just can't. Because we don't really have any aerial threats. We have a couple of players. We're too short in stature as a team, I think, to be playing zonal marking. And the mental capacity of the players to be able to take responsibility just isn't there. You want somebody that's just going to think, actually, I'm just going to clean you out and clear the ball. I don't care if you're on my team. I want this ball out of my box. And we don't have people like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes what zonal marking does, as you mentioned, as you alluded to at least, is it makes you passive, because you're trying to figure out, you're still looking around it. When you look at a team that's zonal marking, they're constantly observing where is this guy, where's that guy. They don't seem to have a clue as to who's their guy. So number one, you don't even have a clue as to who is your man. You're almost like, this is my zone, and you're just trying to figure things out still. So it's a weird system. Again, on theory, it should be the right thing, and I think having a hybrid system of some zonal and some man, like having zonal in certain areas, is important. But I think the ultimate thing is to make sure that you can attack the ball and not caught flat-footed. Anytime you're, as a defender, you're caught flat-footed in that type of situation and you're unable to react, that's there's some structural problems there.
I think it carries over to the second ball as well, which is why we concede so many soft goals. So it's not always directly from the set piece. It'll be from the second ball. Because of the zonal marking system, we're losing the first ball, and then the knockdown. People are not moving. People are stood watch. Oh, that's not my responsibility. It's not in my zone. So that's why we get caught so many times so softly, because nobody wants to take responsibility. Because like I said, that's 2 yards away from me, and it's only a yard away from him. It's his responsibility. It's bloody frustrating.
Yeah, I think often the problem, I don't blame the system of zonal marking so much. For example, the corner that Watford scored from to make it 3-3 last week, I thought that the players were actually relatively well positioned. What caused us the problems was a series of unconvincing clearances, and Wijnaldum absolutely bottling a header that should have been sent right down the field, up to the corner flag, see the game out. It's individual errors, and it comes back to what I was saying before about confidence. Players panic. Teams pump the ball into our box, and our centre-backs panic. Our goalkeeper panics. Despite the fact that I've been quite pleased with his recent performances, he still does get very nervous. He punches the ball out when he should be catching it, and often vice versa. Players don't put their foot through, and they really should be doing that. Wijnaldum ducks out of the way of a header, as I just said. I think the problem comes down to so much more than the system. I think the players were last week, as I said, they were pretty well positioned. We should have been perfectly well able to defend that corner. It seems to be a case to me of players allowing their responsibilities to pass them by. I can't decide, to be honest, whether I think that's an issue with the specific players or whether it's an issue with the coaching. And as a viewer, I don't know. All I can see on the field is players who just don't attack the ball properly and don't put in convincing clearances. Whether that comes down to the players or whether it comes down to management, I have no idea.
And I've also seen this in the past where we've had our strikers on the other opposition team's best headers of the ball. I don't know. Have you noticed this from time to time? Like Firmino is usually marking like a really, really top header of the ball on the other opposition team. I
thought you were going to reference Carroll and Benteke there, actually, the Firmino thing. It doesn't make sense to me to put a striker marking a striker. Like it doesn't. Like I think what you just mentioned there in having a cross or a hybrid between zonal and man marking, it would be, in my mind at least, the way I'm picturing it right now is, say if you had three people along the 6-yard box, have three people deeper, you're better headers of the ball. Your two centre-backs maybe. Don't have the man marking, but have them free with a couple of yards to move into to attack the ball, to clear it. Like, when we take an offensive corner or an offensive set piece, for example, we put the ball into an area where people can run onto it. We need to do that in reverse to clear the ball. We can't be stood still and only have a yard to sidestep forward, backwards before you're in somebody else's zone, because it's just too much confusion. If you have your best headers of the ball free to be able to run and attack the ball from wherever they are, like it just makes sense. That would be a much better system, at least in my eyes, the way I'm picturing it. I might have to do diagrams to get it across properly, but I just don't understand how we are so naive, defensively naive.
I know exactly what you mean about players seeming to be asked to mark the wrong man. I remember the Dortmund game in Dortmund last year, and Dortmund scored the equaliser through Matt Hummels, who was being man-marked by Adam Lallana, I think it was, and I couldn't figure out why on earth have we put one of our shortest players, as far as I know, marking probably the biggest threat from this corner, and of course they scored. And that's a worry, the setup doesn't always seem to suit the players. You have players who aren't marking the natural man. But one thing that I think we really lack at the moment is an intermediary between the coach and team and the players on the field. There is no natural leadership actually out on that pitch. The goalkeeper doesn't have the personality to put his stamp on the game and tell the defenders what he expects of them. And I don't think we've got any of that in any of our other defenders either. Everyone in that back line seems to be the kind of player that would prefer to be delegated to by someone else. We don't have someone who dishes out the responsibilities. If you had, a 25-year-old Jamie Carragher in there, I think actual communication inside the box, especially at set pieces and defending crosses, would be so much better, because he was so vocal. He always told players exactly what was expected of them. I think if you manage to bring in someone like Van Dijk or someone similarly present, someone who lays down a certain level of authority and a very, very high level of authority, you could begin to see the defence rather sort itself out.
Yeah, but we've been this way for years now. It's persisted under Klopp, but it's really been the case since we let Kenny and Steve Clark go a while ago, when we were actually last defensively pretty stable and pretty solid. Since I think we had the best defense in the league, didn't we? When we had Steve Clark here, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, one of the seasons, and then the other season, he got slaughtered for the defensive positioning in a few of the games, early games, and people were like, I think it was just after he came in, people were slaughtering him for, well, what's he supposed to be doing? We haven't made any improvements whatsoever. We're actually getting crucified here. And then obviously his work started to take course, and people started listening, and then we did tighten up. I mean, I might be a little bit wrong there, but I think that's how it went. But yeah, I don't know. I don't understand. Like, defending is, in my eyes, the most important part of the game. Yeah, you need to score to win, but you can't win if you're conceding goals.
Yeah. I mean, Mourinho's made his entire career on being a stout defensive team, first and foremost, because it gives you a platform to win. So once you have a strong base and a strong defensive capability, or at least strong defensive capabilities, you have a platform whereby you can say, we're not going to concede. So all we have to do is score one, and we should be able to take the 3 points from this game.
Well, that's it. I mean, we've got a forward line capable of. I mean, it's a very good top 3, top 4 players in that team. Like the front of the field is great. What we need to be able to do, like you said, is have a stable base at the back to say, okay, we're not going to concede. You guys go and have fun. Do what you need to do. Win us the game. Don't worry about back here. We've got it. But then, obviously, the whole team needs to buy into that ethos as well, and have the confidence.
We're very top heavy. We're very unbalanced. We have too much. We're too good attacking, and we're not so good. Yeah, I mean, the last time we ever had a really terrifically balanced team was 2008-9, when we had that team that finished runner-up to that they only finished runners-up to an incredible United team. You know, but that was the last time we had
the season where Machida won the bloody league for them.
Yeah, that was but they still had a terrific team, and I think we kind of let it slip too after that whole Rafa's dossier type thing that came out again before the Newcastle game. But other than that, I think, you know, that was the last time we really had a properly balanced team where we had a solid defense, a great midfield, and we actually had a very productive attacking twosome with Gerrard and Torres. Yeah.
You can't be dogmatic about the way you play football. Yeah, you can hold to values of making sure players are always working hard, finding space for each other, they continue to press. But I hope it's not a case of sticking with this 4-3-3 through thick and thin because we're going to expect it to somehow come good and it's going to work out in every possible circumstance. It isn't. You know, I look back at that 2008-2009 season that you just mentioned, and I feel like if we'd trusted ourselves to not have to play a 4-2-3-1 every match, if we'd unchained ourselves just that little bit and attacked against teams, and not try to play counter-attacking teams against teams that don't attack in the very first place, really, we probably, in my opinion, would have been champions. We needed to just be able to adjust, and I don't think we were ever really capable of making that adjustment.
Well, see, Rafa got absolutely crucified for his insistence on playing 2 defensive midfielders. But we were defensively astute. Like, we could defend. And, I mean, we over-relied on Gerrard Torres. But before that partnership, it's like Rafa was crucified for being overly defensive, but he got good, final placements in the league. We challenged for cups. Like, he did the right thing. Now, if we could take some of that ethos and put it into our team now and have the front line able to run amok and do what they'd like, I think we'd be a much better team for it.
Yeah, we need to have controlled chaos. Right now, we have more chaos than it's controlled, and we need that controlled chaos. But in order to have that, you also need Klopp to be willing to compromise on his system a little bit, and at the same time have better personnel enact that compromise system. So I think it's twofold. It's not just personnel. It's not just having Verratti come in along with Conte. Again, there has to be some give and leeway from Klopp too, which tells them and says, "This is how I want you to play. This is how I want you to step back and step away from time to time." But again, my feeling is that Klopp wouldn't adapt necessarily to the personnel. At least that's what I feel. Although I could be wrong on that because he's already adapted.
His system, yeah.
He's already adapted in one way because he was playing more for 4-2-3-1 at Dortmund, and he's adapted over here to this personnel. So I actually might be wrong on that. Where he's been flexible with people, he's been flexible with players, and he's gotten the most out of them. So I'm probably wrong there. Actually, I shouldn't have said that about Klopp. But again,
I do believe he is arrogant.
He is arrogant. He's stubborn.
Yeah, stubborn's probably a better word to use rather than arrogant. But I mean, that's how he's made his name. But like I said, to be able to have that reliance and that belief in your system, you need to have the players to back it up. Like you can't teach some of our players to play the way he requires. It's just not possible. I said they're not clever enough to understand it and take it on board and be able to do it. Like your tactics as a footballer, if what your manager wants you to do, you need to be able to do without thinking. You need to totally buy into the system and believe what he's told you is the right thing to do. If you don't buy into that and trust it and be able to instinctually follow what you've been told, you can't follow it to a T. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get caught out. So this whole counter press thing, it's good to watch when it comes off, and we've benefited from it a lot. But I don't think we need to do it as often as we do. We should pick and choose our moments because, I can relate this to Sunday League. You'll have a striker that will chase the ball around constantly on the back line all game long and get so frustrated and so angry because he's getting played around because nobody else is backing him up. Now, if the whole team was to back him up at the same time and push up to their men and narrow down the angles for the pass and cut off the passes, it would work. We don't do that. We have 2 or 3 people closing down one guy. And then if you look at the shot yesterday, Firmino had the shot. And then if you watch how quickly Palace played out, Townsend had 3 or 4 players around him at the halfway line. And he managed to just turn and flick the ball into the inside. And then everything was just split wide open because we'd all closed down one guy instead of closing down as a unit, as a team, and closing down the options rather than the man on the ball. So I think the whole counter-pressing and gegen-pressing, whatever, just isn't being understood properly by our team. Either that or they're being coached wrong.
Or maybe the system, just like most systems, just has inherent flaws in it that can be exploited from time to time. I don't think it's a foolproof system. I don't think gegenpressing and counterpressing is a foolproof system. I think there are ways to get around it. And I think better teams with better quality players can certainly get around it because we've seen mediocre Premier League teams able to cut through us quite easily. So
I was just going to say, I honestly can't remember really being cut open too badly by the top teams. For some reason, we don't seem to pressure them as much. It's kind of like a bully system almost. Like the smaller teams, we just believe we should flat out run over them and that they should give it up for us. Or that's how it appears to me, at least. The big teams come to play, so we're not caught in those positions as much because we're not hounding them constantly. Otherwise, we would get crucified. So we do tend to sit back a little bit against them and play our game properly. Whereas the smaller teams, we have some sort of, it's like we believe we're the authority. We have to do that. We're going to run through them and they're not going to have any say. We're going to control the game completely. So it's the smaller teams that are cutting us open. And that's why we're getting such poor results against the worst teams, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, we haven't figured out how to really make the smaller teams, especially away from home, how to make them pay and play a more controlled, disciplined type of game and a more patient game at times as well, because the teams will just kind of give us the ball and say, we don't mind you having it, and not only will they not mind you having it, but we'll give you the wide areas. Now, I'm happy that we have Trent Alexander-Arnold and we have Andy Robertson playing those fullback positions, because a better quality of cross will help quite a bit. Whether it's
in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not from the first header, maybe there's an error there somewhere, that you can pounce upon. Like yesterday's goal, that was, basically, it came from really an error from Crystal Palace and their defending, where they just decided to dribble back towards goal with the ball. I have no idea why. And then Solanke put his foot in, got the little deflection, and then Mane was able to seal the game, basically get the 3 points for us.
That ball back to Mane from Robbo was disgusting, though.
Yeah, it was. Oh God, yeah. I don't want to think about it. But this is really, one of the things I hope that we across, over the course of this season, we continue to remedy that. And I think Jurgen and the boys will be continuing to work on remedying it. Also, one more thing I want to get your thoughts on. It's been maybe 2 weeks. It's first couple of weeks of the season. Who have you been most impressed by?
Ooh, interesting. It's got to be Mane, but at the same time, we kind of come to expect it. Like he's hit the ground running and carried on like he did last season.
Yeah. For me, he's been the best player so far.
Yeah, he's standing out head and shoulders above everybody. So yeah, the one that stands out the most. I mean, if you were going to say the one like most impressed and put an extra condition on that being the one that's made the biggest leap towards impressing, so somebody that you wouldn't expect it from, I'd say Klavan.
Yeah, Klavan had a good game yesterday.
Yeah, he only had one game, but everybody kind of ruled him out. He's not quick enough. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, everybody kind of resigned him to being third choice and accepting that Lovren would be the first choice with Matip. Now, after that performance yesterday, like people are clamouring on the board for him to start and to leave Lovren out. So, I mean, that's good for us to have a third choice centre-back that everybody had kind of forgotten about, so to speak, come in and kind of oust one of our first choices. So, yeah, I'd say Klavan.
I think Mane's really hit the ground running again. And I must say, with Sadio Mane, he's landed me with one hell of an egg on my face. Because when we were first linked with him, for the amount of money we were linked with him for, I was honestly scratching my head and couldn't really figure out what we saw in him. I saw him as technically relatively limited. I thought his first touch was quite off. Honestly, thought he was quite overrated. But I tell you what, since he's been in our shirts, he's looked absolutely the right player for us.
Yeah.
And his performances against Watford, his performance against Palace as well, he didn't actually stand out against Crystal Palace, but to have the presence of mind to take that chance, that half chance even, and give us a 1-0 victory, I think that, it's the sign of a great player. I think he's getting better. Mohamed Salah as well really, really impressed me against Watford. I thought he added such a new dimension to our attack. I was so disappointed to see him on the bench against Palace. Really, really looking forward to watching him on Wednesday night as well. We've given ourselves one hell of an attacking lineup just by having Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah able to play off each other. That's something I'm really looking forward to seeing develop as the season goes on.
Yeah, I'm with you on Mane. I think, I was a little bit hesitant on Mane as well, simply because I was arguing initially before he actually signed here that he wasn't a wide player. At least that was my argument, that he'll thrive more centrally. And maybe that is the case. But I think one of the reasons why we all were a little bit hesitant on him regarding the fee is because we signed him pretty early on in that window last season. So we actually didn't get a chance to actually see how the transfer market and the inflated fees would work out. So he actually came in for a relatively nominal fee for a player, sort of a inner Premier League transfer. True. So I'm really, really pleased with how he is. I think some of his goals recently they're reminding me a little bit more and more of Suarez in the fact that he is got that dogged determination. The type of goal that he scored yesterday was very similar to a goal Suarez scored in his last season with us. I think he got a hat trick that day. I don't remember if it was against Crystal Palace or not, but he slipped in the box and he still managed to, get the ball and, shoot it on goal and score the goal. So he's reminding me a little bit more about that type of player who can just create something for himself.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Suarez, but he's getting to the point where if we don't surround him with great talent soon, we may well lose him. If we don't lose Coutinho this year to Barcelona may come in for Mane next season. And what about just in the league generally, like in terms of teams? Like which team has impressed you the most so far in the first couple of weeks?
I'm not gonna say it, but I can. You can guess who I'm.
I know. I think so.
Yeah.
Did they win? Did they win 4-0 yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah. They've been impressive. There's no doubt about that. Again, but they've made some terrific additions to their team as well. So when you sign a player when you sign Matic and you sign Lukaku, and you already add that to Mkhitaryan and Pogba and Mata. United have been adding for 2 straight seasons some really, really top quality players. Eventually you'll get there.
Unfortunately, I have to say, so far it's been Man United. They've recruited exactly the kinds of players they needed. They needed someone. With Ibrahimovic gone, with Rooney gone, though Rooney was no longer the right fit for Man United, they needed to make a statement by signing a top striker, and that's absolutely what they've done. The market the way it is, to sign a guaranteed 25 goal a season striker, he could even hit more for a better team in Man United. Probably be worth what they've spent on him. But also what's really impressed me as well is the acquisition of Nemanja Matic, because he controls the midfield for Man United, which is something they lacked last year. They had so little character, even with Paul Pogba coming in for 89 million quid last year. The midfield never felt convincing. It didn't have a particular style of play. It was actually not particularly interesting to watch. Now that Matic has come in and he's doing the simple stuff, he's doing the dirty work. Paul Pogba's got this freedom to get forward now. You've all of a sudden got an £89 million midfielder playing for Man United because they've been able to sign someone like Matic to drop deeper and do some of the dirty work that was expected of Pogba. So they really unleashed him. They've got me worried. I think in spite of the fact that people malign him, Mourinho is still a top manager. I don't like the man at all, but you've got to hold your hand up and say he is extremely talented. He's one hell of a coach.
But I don't want to rule out Chelsea after what they did today, going away to Tottenham and pulling out the win, an impressive win too.
Yeah. Especially under a manager as talented as Conte, who's won 4 league titles, 1 unbeaten. He is a seriously good coach, and I must say, quite underrated. I don't think he gets anywhere near the credit that he deserves for being as good a coach as he is. It wouldn't surprise me to see Chelsea defend the title, even after the fact that they lost at home to Burnley. There are big question marks about their squad depth, the fact that they've replaced Nemanja Matic with Bakayoko from Monaco, who we're yet to see a great deal of. People are beginning to raise questions. Well, people raised big questions about Chelsea at this point last year, and despite a shaky start, they absolutely stormed the title. It wouldn't surprise me to see them do it again. They've got the manager. I'm not sure whether they've got the squad. That remains to be seen. But they've certainly got the coaching talent to do it.
Yeah, and they possibly have the best player in the Premier League in Hazard as well, especially if he's on form. Yeah. So, again, I think we've been talking for a good while, Fergs. And so why don't we pick this up probably next week? And how about we, basically catch up next week?
Yeah, works for me. I don't know if I can definitely make it, but
sure,
just be good to keep the faces rotating and have somebody else on. So
yeah, I will. I'll see about that. I'll see who's available in the forums podcast thread. I've been sort of extending invitations over to some people. I'm trying to get Larissa Carius on, trying to make sure that he buys a headphone set with a mic, but we'll
just
see.
don't allow his webcam on because we'll be bloody pestered with pictures of team lineups.
Let's see. I want to see what What I hope that's his like profile pic. It's that's what I hope his profile pic is. I hope it's just a lineup with non-LFC players who he wants and wishes we could have had.
You could just have a team of Koncheskis. It'd fit in well with yours.
Oh boy, yeah. Let's. What I'm thinking as the podcast continues to grow, I'll have to upgrade from Koncheski at some point. So
to Paulson, maybe.
No, I'm going Joe Cole next.
Ooh.
Yeah,
oh,
I'm going Joe Cole.
The first time I went to Anfield was the game against who did we play? It was a Turkish side, I believe it was, where Joe Cole took the penalty and missed.
Was it Trabzonspor?
Trabzonspor, yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
that was the first game I went to Anfield to see. And we were sat in the Cop, and we were singing Joey Cole, and he ran up to take that penalty and fluffed it, and yeah.
His career was never the same after that, at least.
Oh dear.
Never the same with that, the heights of Trabzonspor. But maybe I'll bump it up to Joe Cole next round. So we'll see about that. But it was good talking with you, Fergs.
Good to speak to you, mate.
Yeah, definitely. Take care, Paul. Have a good night.
Take care, bud. You too. Take care, man. Bye.